All right, we're about to debut the third of our five graffiti games for this year, sponsored by Rockstar Games. Cara Hillstock's game, To Be With You, is an interactive visual novel depicting a descent into an abusive relationship. We'll now go live to my conversation with Cara about her groundbreaking work. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to day 3 of Play NYC 2020. This is Dan, CEO and founder of Playcrafting. We're the folks behind Play NYC. Hope you've been enjoying Play NYC this week. We're here for the grand finale of day 3 and really excited for what we have in store to close out our third night. As we've been talking about all week this week, we're closing out each night with the debut of one of our 5 graffiti games. And this is an opportunity to get to know each of the developers of those games and the honorees that were chosen to make them. And so with that being said, I'm so excited to welcome Cara Hillstock. Hailing from Seattle, Cara is one of those 5 developers selected for this year's Graffiti Games program. She is somewhat of a jack of all trades. She's a writer and a narrative designer, most known for directing and being lead writer on Asagao Academy Normal Boots Club. She streams narrative-based and chill games on Twitch, focusing on developing an inclusive and compassionate LGBT plus friendly community. Her list of past odd jobs includes experimental theater director, debt collector, love that one, Cara, newspaper editor, IT technician, podcast host, film actress, and anonymous video editor / performer named Miss Editor. Love it. Born in Germany and living all across America, she currently calls the greater Seattle area home, where her amazingly helpful roommate enables her to work around her chronic illnesses, and her pesky old cat drives her crazy, which I'm sure is driving her even more crazy in the middle of a quarantine. So everyone watching at home and in our chat, huge round of applause for Cara Hillstock, everybody.
Yay! Hi, thank you.
Of course. Did I get everything right there?
Yeah, you did. Well done.
Awesome. Perfect. So, Cara, so excited to have you join us tonight. Really looking forward to folks diving in and checking out the game that you put together. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about To Be With You?
Well, To Be With You is a semi-autobiographical interactive visual novel that I have been wanting to make for about 5 years, but haven't really been able to because the subject matter that it covers is pretty heavy. It's about a girl named Alcy who finally gets to move in with her childhood friend and long-distance partner of about 2 years or so. And when she does, their relationship starts going pretty south pretty fast, and it's about how she's struggling to try and keep that relationship together, and whether you as the player can help her save it.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about the inspiration for the game. I know you said you've been like gestating with it and wanting to make it for 5 years now. So excited that this idea is finally coming to life and folks are able to check it out. Where did you get the inspiration for it? How did To Be With You sort of come together in your head before it came together on the screen?
Well, I see myself as primarily a writer, and I feel that games are one of the best ways to communicate experiences to other people that you kind of have to be there in order to understand. And so the idea for To Be With You came to me after I got out of a pretty terrible relationship that I was in. And I felt myself wanting to be able to communicate to other people why that relationship was so bad and kind of how it got there, because it's a situation that a lot of people don't really understand from the outside until after they've been through it. And so I had that idea about 5 years ago, but it's been a little bit difficult to find people willing to tackle this subject matter with me. And so I didn't have anything set in stone until you guys reached out to me for Play NYC. And that night, the day that I got your email, I sat down and I drafted the entire game. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm making it.
That's amazing. And first of all, thank you for sharing your story and for you know putting your heart and soul into this game. It is something that I'm sure a lot of people have been through and are potentially struggling with right now. Something I love about what we do at Playcrafting and with Play NYC is that it's really an opportunity for folks at home to get to know not just new games and play games, but to get to know the folks behind games and get to know the folks that actually make the games that they love or the games that they're discovering. And so, what a great way to connect with folks and get to know you through playing this game.
Yeah, it's a very very personal game, and I've never really had any experience with working on something that was this personal. So it was a really
Hmm.
intense month, kind of handling my own emotions about this in the lead up to it coming out.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and tell us about that too. I walked folks through your background and some of the projects you've worked on. Obviously, making a game in a month, month and a half on its own is challenging enough. Uh, Tell us about some of the challenges that came up for you in making a game that is so personal to you versus, games that I'm sure you've been excited to make, but perhaps are not as directly connected to your own life.
Hmm. Um, well, I'm gonna spoil a little bit about the game. It's a small bit, but I'm gonna spoil a little bit about the game. The tough subject matter that I keep referring to is that this game uh, covers the topic of emotional abuse rather deeply, I would say, rather intensely. Um, and so the process of making this was very uh just all consuming because I had to go back and revisit um a lot of memories and revisit them very vividly in order to try and do my best to use the mechanics of the game to capture the feelings that I was feeling at the time that I was going through that relationship and try to put the player in those feelings that I was having. um so it was very I just all consuming because of that. I
Right.
don't think that there's an aspect of my life that it didn't touch because I even when I wasn't working on the game, I was kind of stewing over everything that happened and thinking, oh, how else can I get this game to interact in a way that's going to make somebody experience something? Um, so it was much more like 24/7 than I would say some other projects that I've worked on have been.
Wow, wow, makes sense, and it sounds like it could definitely sort of conjure up stuff from the past, from the experience that inspired it too.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Um, and with your background and identifying primarily as a writer, talk to us a little bit about how you sort of took this experience that you've had and turned it into something interactive. This isn't just a story. It's not just a book that you can open up and read and then put down. It's something that you're actually experiencing and immersing yourself in. Talk to us a little bit about the challenge or maybe the benefit of uh, making this experience of yours into an interactive game versus just putting pen to paper and writing it out and telling folks.
Oh, this is a subject I'm actually really passionate about.
Yes,
um,
great.
Games are so special as a medium because you get to interact with them in a way that you really don't for almost any other kind of storytelling medium. And especially for something like this, I think that just the text wouldn't be able to communicate, or it wouldn't really be able to capture the mindset as well as, you know, how I use the choices in the game, the way that I manipulate the choices in the game, and the way that they're used not just as a means for the player to play, but as a means for the player to, for example, experience futility or to experience
Hmm.
what gaslighting feels like. Uh, the choices
Wow.
are, and because it's a game, I get to control everything from like the speed of the text and where characters pause when they speak to the music and when the sound comes in and the sound effects, and really every aspect of this experience. I don't think that there's a single thing that I did not touch that I did not like tweak a little bit to try and make it closer to that actual experience of living through what Alcy is going through right now. Um, and there's so many fun ways that you get to do that. I really approached it from the perspective of it being a holistic experience rather than from the perspective of it being a visual novel or a story or a regular game. I wanted it to be I guess I don't know what you would call that, but much more of an overall experience than just necessarily what comes to mind when people think of games.
Right. And like you said, that's the beauty of games as a medium. They're here for a lot of different reasons, and they can be used in a lot of different ways. I loved the one thing that you said about how you were able to control how how quickly the typography shows up on the screen, and really give a sense of the experience of being in this relationship, versus if it was just to be a book. There's a lot more left for interpretation, and I think that's something that's I think is really powerful when it comes to this game specifically, because an experience like this is a lot about having control versus not having control, and control is a very big part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that definitely comes through here, and folks can see it on the screen too with the text that's coming through.
And I think that that's one of the reasons why this works so well as a game instead of as a story, is that when you're reading a story, you have the ability to read as fast as you want and pause when you want. And, you have some control over, oh, maybe the character actually said it in this kind of tone and that sort of thing. Whereas this game really takes a lot of that, a lot of that control out of your hands. You still have the ability to turn off the game or take a break from the game whenever you want to, but you have much less choice when it comes to how to read the lines and how the people could possibly be saying the things, because I made it so that they're more likely to be said in one way over the other.
Gotcha. And we're in such a very specific phase of the world right now as a whole, and folks are flocking to games and to their screens in record numbers. And I'm sure that with even Play NYC going virtual for the first time this year, we have folks playing graffiti games that from all over the world that wouldn't be able to play otherwise. What do you hope players emerge from playing To Be With You, the experience of it, right after they finish, right after they close the screen? What is that feeling that you hope that they have once they go off to bed or go off and have a coffee and are thinking about it?
Well, first, I hope that I haven't traumatized them too badly. But
Fair.
but what my goal really was with this game was twofold. On the one hand, I really want people to be able to leave this game with an experience that sticks with them and with new empathy, or if they didn't have it before, then with new empathy for the experiences of a person who goes through something like this, and why people stay, why they don't leave even though it looks so bad from the outside. I really wanted people to have more of a sense of how that happens. And additionally, I wanted it to be kind of a I guess an example, so that people who maybe haven't have been lucky enough to not experience this in a relationship know what it looks like, so that in the beginning they can see the warning signs a lot earlier. I think that if I had had something like this to look at, I knew, what abuse was. I had read things in school. They told me what abuse was, but I had no idea how that practically shows up in a relationship. So I was just caught totally
I
off
see.
guard when I was trying to be really nice to the person I was dating, and they were taking advantage of me in ways I didn't notice. So I hope that on the second hand, people can come away with understanding how these relationships happen, and hopefully we'll be able to prevent them or a friend from getting into something that looks like it has a lot of warning signs.
Wow. We've had sort of a common theme across a few of our Play NYC segments today, with games and how they can be an agent for change, and they can serve, positive social good in the world. We had Drew Crescenti from the Jennifer Ann's group earlier today, and he runs a group that focuses on teen dating violence, and teaches folks and educates folks about teen dating violence through games. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of folks that are watching at home and get to play the game are going to find a lot of inspiration, even in aspiring game designers and developers down the line in the work that you've put together here. What's some of the inspiration when it comes to games and what you'd like to do with them that you've gotten? Like, what kind of games have you played? Have you tried that inspire your work? And so, who are some of the designers and developers that inspire you?
Oh gosh. um,
Every question's a
I
big
get
question tonight.
yeah.
You made a big
I
game.
get
I had to come with big questions.
That's fair. That's fair. Obviously, there are a lot of games from my childhood that I got inspired by, and they're the ones that like most everybody knows about, like lots of RPGs like Final Fantasy and Zelda and that kind of thing. But the older I get, the more inspired I am by various indie games, who are really going out there to kind of push the envelope in terms of like inclusivity and what kinds of topics are allowed to be discussed in
Mm.
in the media. So I would like to just give one quick shout out to Arcade Spirits, which is a very great visual novel that recently came out that is extremely like LGBT inclusive, and you get to actually mold the protagonist's personality as you go through the game. Uh, and I
Oh,
find
wow.
that really really interesting, and they do some very interesting things with interactivity in the game as well. So that's one of my recommendations.
Wow. And like I said, I'm sure there's a lot of folks that are hearing you right now and are playing the game that are feeling inspired by you. What advice would you give to the independent game developers and designers of tomorrow on how to, use games as an outlet and sort of push forward with games as a medium, maybe as a career? What advice would you give to them?
Hmm. I would say that if you have something that you really want to make, then don't give up on it just because maybe some people are saying no at the time. Like, keep those ideas in your back pocket. Keep the ones that you want to use in your back pocket. Like I said, this is a game that I have been wanting to make for 5 years. And
Right.
during that time, nobody really wanted to take me up on it. But I did eventually get to make it. And I think that part of the reason it was hard to make was that I wanted to be able to make it a really honest and raw game. And so I held on to a lot of creative control as well, and I didn't want to change certain things about the game just to get it made. And obviously, depending on your goals as a game developer, like whether you're trying to make money or whether you just want to make what you want to make, that's going to affect that decision. But I think that it should be noted that there is that option to just like slowly plug away on something and make it exactly what you want it to be, if if you're more interested in game development as an art than a career where you're trying to make money. Like, that is an option, and you can make very worthwhile games that way.
Really, really great advice. I think it's so important for folks to understand how there are so many different paths toward making games and so many different ways in which you can make games and different ways to define success around making and releasing games.
Yeah, exactly. And I
Yeah,
think it's important that people know that, since we usually have the one path to success, which is usually like, make this my livelihood, which doesn't happen for everybody.
right, right. So being realistic makes sense too. Um, All right, so before we hop into the chat for our Q&A, one more question. So to be with you, are you done with the game? Is it sort of exactly where you wanted it to be, and now it's just out there in the wild, or does it go somewhere else from here?
It's nearly done. It's close to done. There's one feature that I did not get to implement into the game, which was a tooltips. I wanted it to be so that when you went through the game a second time, you'd be able to hover over James's dialogue and see which techniques he was using in that moment to try and manipulate Elsie. So I
Oh,
would
wow.
like to try. It was a lot because it was all the dialogue in the game, so I couldn't get it done in
Hmm.
time. But I would really, really like to add that in as a feature, and then I think that the game will be finished for me.
Gotcha, gotcha. All right, so I'm going to pop into the chat and grab some questions from our viewers. First up is from Zek Frost. What was the most enjoyable part of the game to make for you?
Mm, either making the art, or I didn't make this part, so I don't know if it counts. But the music in the game was made by Ram Marme, Siapimp, online, and it is absolutely incredible. So every time I got a new song from him, I was just like, ah! I really like fueled me up for another night of intense work. So that was definitely the most enjoyable part.
Very cool. All right, next question is from Lucius the Ninja. Loving these names in our chat tonight. What was it like creating this game almost completely by yourself compared to your last game? What were some of the good sides and the bad sides?
The bad sides was that I was extremely anxious the whole time because I wasn't sure, especially with the art, how well I was going to do. I'm not really an artist, so I was very nervous that the art wasn't going to be able to carry the game as well as I wanted it to. I think it ended up
Hmm.
serviceable though. But the good
Yeah, it
parts
looks
was
great.
obviously, oh, thanks. The good part was obviously being able to have full creative control with a game as personal as this, and like with the content matter that it discusses. I think being able to have the game fully in my control was important for my own mental health while making it.
Hmm. That makes sense. Yeah, and I think just given the subject matter and the personal piece that went into it, I'm sure it's hard to define a piece that is the most quote unquote enjoyable.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so next up we have a bunch of questions coming through. I love it. Um, ooh, this is a game. It's a meta game, a meta question from a meta DVB viewer saying, question, this is pretty powerful and brutal, but is it a game? Not to get wonky or anything.
So, what is a
Going big with
game?
every question. Yeah, every
Yeah,
question's big. Even the audience questions tonight.
I knew it. I was prepared for it.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
is a game is a pretty big question and also kind of personal from what I've noticed. For me, a game is an experience that requires interactivity in order to complete. So I would say that this is a game, but I also think that you could look at this and call it more of an experience than a game, or you could call it maybe more of like an artistic something than a
Mm,
game, because it doesn't really focus much on the gameplay or even necessarily having fun.
mm,
So I think that it's a little bit open to interpretation, but for me, because it's interactive, it's a game.
gotcha. Um, I'd agree with you too. It's a game.
Thanks.
uh, yeah, of course. All right. Persephones asks, now that the game is finished, what aspect of it are you most proud of?
Ooh.
And you
I
can't
would
say
say
the
that
music.
I.
You cannot say the music.
Oh, you caught me out. Uh, I would say that I'm probably the most proud of, I guess maybe the writing and kind of how it builds that overall atmosphere, especially having seen a couple of people play through the game at this point. Um, I think that the writing does its job in really hitting people very hard where I wanted to hit people very hard. And the interactivity of the choices really does the job that I was intending them to do. So I'm the most proud of how my vision actually came out properly.
Wow. I'm sure that feels good too, since the idea has been in your head for 5 years now.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah. And final question from our viewers, Chip X86 says, you mentioned that a lot of this came from your own experiences. Did making this game feel, I guess, therapeutic in a way?
Hmm. I would love to be able to say yes. um, I think it wasn't necessarily therapeutic, but the process of really like I would say that the game is kind of like a distilled version of like many of my memories kind of coalesced into the most distilled narrative forms that I could get them. And so, because I had to do this, I had to get both into Alcie's head and into James, who is her abuser. And
Right.
being able to mechanically kind of see how both people's intentions were during each scene, I think it really helped, I guess, deepen that understanding that it wasn't my fault and that abuse is not the victim's fault. Because if James wasn't there, Elsie wouldn't have found herself in this kind of bad situation. So I think that that part was therapeutic.
Wow, that's great to hear. All right, well, before we head off for the night, let everybody know where can they go ahead and follow along with your work, anything else that you have coming up in the future.
Well, you can find me on Twitter and also on our friendly Twitch platform where I stream games
What's
every
that?
Sunday. Yeah, I stream games every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. So you can find me either on Twitter or on Twitch at Cheratomo, which is spelled Cheratomo.
Amazing. All right. Well, Cara, thank you so much again for putting your heart and soul into this game. For folks that want to play it, it is available now completely for free at play-nyc.com. Cara, thanks so much for being a part of this. And everybody, wherever you are around the world, go ahead and give Cara a huge round of applause for being so gracious to share her story through this game and sharing it with all of us. And for everybody tuning in, we will be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern with day 4 of Play NYC. We've got so much great stuff coming up tomorrow night. First up is the history, evolution, and future of viewer participation with GenVid technology. So that's a great one for all you viewers out there looking to find ways to actually interact with games that are being streamed that you're watching. We have a great conversation between Harold Goldberg, the head of the New York Video Game Critics Circle, and esteemed journalist and writer Evan Narcisse, who also wrote some of the most recent Black Panther comics. Really, really cool. There's BizDev 101, the basics for aspiring game developers. So folks looking to dive in and actually make games of your own, check that one out. And of course, right in line with what we've been talking about all night tonight, we have a great panel lined up for you tomorrow night about intersectionality in gaming and how our differences can help or hurt us. Yeah, see, it's all lined up. And then we'll be closing out tomorrow night with the debut of our 4th graffiti game and the interview with that developer. In the meantime, like I said, make sure you go play To Be With You on play-nyc.com. Alongside Cara's game, you'll find 105 more games to explore. There's 30 playable demos on there. And thanks to our friends at Verizon, you can enter to win $1,000 worth of indie games yourself by checking out the giveaway on there. So go, we'll be on there all week long. We'll see you back here tomorrow night at 5 p.m. Eastern. From all of us at Play NYC, have a great night, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Good night.